Welcome, loves, to the Wisdom of Womanhood podcast. I am Showy Moon and I am beyond fucking excited for this topic today. We are coming in hot to start off our first topic session for the podcast. You are going to learn so much.
Hey guys, it's Pippa here. We are just even before we press record, we're like bouncing off ideas. We should just record the raw shit before we even press record.
Pre-record.
Pre-record chats. That's kind of what we should do for the Patreon is have these little pre-record
Mm.
chats and just shove them into
Mhm.
Patreon. The
Yeah.
this topic, I know you're gonna lead this one because I'm gonna learn so much from you. You inspire me with this topic. So yeah, just I'm like going to sit here and just enjoy the wisdom and the knowledge that you share today. And obviously I'll have knowledge and wisdom as well to share, but
Mm.
just that element of learning from you is I'm just excited for that today.
Yeah, amazing. And I think what's so beautiful at this point in time for us as women is that the uncoverings that are occurring within this topic we're going into today, which is essentially her story. It is her story throughout history. It's how we got here, how we got to this place as the collective feminine, as individual women, because so much of that was intentionally not shared. There was a great podcast I was listening to the other day, and the whole conversation was the people who were writing the history books were doing the things to the woman. And so it's not there. And we're at this time now where we're able to really collect pieces from history, when it comes to archaeology and it comes to bringing to the light documents that were intentionally stripped from mainstream history education. And so it's super, super informative. And also what I love about the thing that we do in this podcast is that bringing up some of the shadows that's happened through centuries of femicide. And also we're going to be giving you super practical tools to be part of the change in the uncovering of what might be slightly uncomfortable today. There's going to be some uncomfortable pieces to this conversation that we need to look at as a collective, not just as women, as a collective society, in order to tend to the wounds. It's collective shadow work, right? We've spoken about shadow work, and there's on the micro level on, doing your own stuff. But in order to really evolve and push forward as a collective, we have to do collective shadow work. We have to look at the places throughout history, our foremothers, our forefathers, that have been really, really fractured, that have been part of a destruction and division agenda, and bring them to the light so we can alchemize.
Mm.
Otherwise they stay there and they stay in our systems, they stay in our DNA through what we know about epigenetics now. And it's like, I think what's happened as a collective, we're sitting there and we're like, we don't want to look at that uncomfortable thing. We don't want to look at that wound or that scar. And the more that we don't look at it, the deeper it becomes, and then it passes on to the next generation, next generation, next generation. So it's like this uncovering of the uncomfortable, but we're going to hold it in love and be part of the change so that history and her story doesn't repeat.
Yeah, it's like
And
I was thinking about that last night. You said about the generations. Like, can we just honor our lineage to
Mhm.
what they endured for us to be here right now? Like for us doing this
Mm.
podcast. I'm sure
Yeah.
our ancestors right now, from you and me, are sat like, well done, girls. Like
Yeah,
just
they
yeah,
are.
because I think about it all the time. Chris and I are history nerds. We love history and
Mm.
it's like going back to different parts of history and thinking, God, they endured so much, or they went through like wars and whatever it was. And I thought, God, they've been through so much. And the survivors are because,
Mhm.
that's why we're here, because they survived all those crappy, shitty things.
Yeah. And it's a testament, right? And there's something that I actually speak about in my woman circles that I hold, and I do it in a way that's really loving and compassionate and honoring. But I feel so fucking deeply to my core that we have an obligation and a responsibility as women to step into our power and step into our truths because they couldn't do it. Like our foremothers couldn't do it. They didn't have the opportunity, and there are still women around the world right now that can't do it because they'll be murdered for speaking the way that we do, for living the way that we do. For it's something I was talking about the other day. Me as a single woman with children, owns my own car, like has my own house, has my own job, speaks about the stuff I do, does like holistic wellness work. I literally could not live in other countries in the world right now. I would be abused. I would be shunned from society, like to not be under the control, for lack of a better word, but of a man, under the ownership of a man. I literally couldn't exist. And people, this is the stuff that people really need to realize is that yes, there's the HERstory, which is lacking in terms of our understanding around it for so many people. And there is also, this is real right now. Like the impacts of what has happened over the last 1800 years, it's still prevalent. It still exists right now. There is still femicide occurring right now. And, I think it's really important we'll do this throughout this whole podcast of, obviously we're a podcast for women and the things we speak into are particularly that, but it's really important to also realize that the suppression and femicide of women has impacted everybody. Like it's impacted everyone on a collective level. Internal capitalization has impacted everybody. So the issues that we raise are not just around empowering the feminine, but it's about healing the wounds of society, like healing the wounds of the collective, which helps everyone. Everyone gains from that.
Oh, what a juicy, juicy conversation it's going to be. So before we dive into it, I know you've got to answer the question from last week, which was if you were stuck on a desert island, what three things would you take with you? It was a crystal, a book, and a sex toy.
Yeah. Red Jasper. Red Jasper is my like king nurturer. I have had the most incredible experiences with Jasper, just like wacky. You can't even explain how things have happened with them. Like, yeah, crazy things happen with Jasper. So definitely read Jasper. The book is Come As You Are. I've read it, and I would highly, highly recommend it. It is such a great book for the understanding of anatomy, like sexual anatomy, empowerment, desire, all these kinds of things. Yeah, I love it. It's such a great book. Like it is the book that it's like I would read it like 20 times. Sex toy. So I know we spoke and you were like, how are you going to recharge it? But I've just decided that in my imaginary answering of this question, I have a solar powered rabbit,
I love it.
which must exist. Like, surely that exists. It is my favorite, like absolute favorite. It just, so it's got two motors as well. So it's got a motor there and then a motor there, and they've both got 10 different settings on them.
Jeez. Yeah.
And it's and it's like just a great shape, size. I feel like it was made for me.
It probably was.
Yeah.
You need to email and be like, hey, can you get it solar powered?
I know. Yeah. So yeah, because and also that one particular toy has navigated through so much healing with me, like so much deep healing, so many emotional releases. Yeah. So I would feel bad if I chose anything but that.
I love that. Do you have your joke for me?
Uh-huh.
I'm like already laughing thinking about the joke. I was like, oh my God.
Okay. You probably already know it, but okay. In true, like, shall we style, it's gonna be a little bit naughty. What do you call a lesbian dinosaur?
I don't know.
I lick a lot of puss.
Oh my God, it's so funny. I've never heard that one in my life. That is so
I'm
funny.
so glad. I was trying to find what you hadn't heard.
What? Say it again.
I've heard like all the naughty jokes, so I was like, let's try and get one.
A lick a pussy saw.
I lick a lot. I lick a pussy. I lick a lot of puss.
I lick a lot of puss.
I lick a lot of puss. Yeah.
That's brilliant. Oh my God, that's so funny. Oh my God.
I lick a lot of puss.
Like a lot of puss.
Episode 2, and we've already got Pippa crying. I love it.
God, I cry and laugh. Like when I cry, I just when I laugh, I cry. It's like they
This is
just, yeah,
so good.
yeah.
What a good cathartic release
I
for you
know it
guys.
is.
Like a
That's
lot
why I
of
just
us.
think like doing a joke every week is just that it just laughter's so powerful, isn't it? So
Yeah.
it's awesome. So when I think about this topic, and
Hmm.
we're going to do a quote and some book recommendations at the end as well. We always kind of, that's the whole point, isn't it? This podcast. It's not just about Shawi and I. It's about the collective. It's about what other women are bringing to the world. And it's funny because you've been talking about doing this topic, but then in my actual
Hmm.
life, things have been coming up around the topic
Of
as always.
course.
Chris and I have been talking about it a lot. He agrees that, women have so much superpower. They have superpowers, and they were shunned for that back 2000 years ago. I mean, even you said like 1700, 1800 years ago, that's still recent. That's actually still
Absolutely.
recent. And I think Chris was speaking about it. He said even law, like he studied law for a while. He said some of the laws are like from like 200 years ago, 300 years ago, which is recent. So I think like
Hmm.
it's like I was saying how we are now in our generation, you can still see some of the same conditioning around, like you said, in different countries, how the woman should just be stay at
Absolutely.
home, just
Hmm.
like, just look after the kids, not be seen, not be heard. We're
Well, not
like,
even that. There's places where you can't even own a car as a woman. You
yeah,
can't live in a house. Not even like as a mother. You can't even live in a house without it being either your father's house or your husband's house.
just that like suppression of, well, we were listening
Mhm.
to a podcast and it said back in the day, women couldn't buy a house, couldn't buy land, couldn't
Yeah.
buy pretty much anything apart from groceries. It's like, there's just this, and I think we were talking about it in conversation about there needs to be more women, in power, helping
Hmm.
helping the earth ascend, helping the earth because they have more empathy, they have nurturing empathy, they
Hmm.
have nurturing motherly empathy. And I think that's why
Even
like,
when you look at
yeah,
emotional intelligence, communication and emotional intelligence. And again, this is, we know this, and I'm going to articulate it so our listeners really know this is not an us versus them. This is an honoring of everyone. However, factually, biological females have higher emotional awareness intelligence. We read body language at a much more evolved rate, and that comes from caveman days, from when our senses developed, our communication, our processing developed very differently depending on the genders. So this conversation is exactly perfect, because of course we need the people in there that have awareness in those places that biologically men don't, and they're great at other things, but if you don't get that balance, then you're only looking through one lens.
I love how you said
Yeah.
as well with the stories that are written in our history, they're written by a few people, but what's the big phrase that we hear all the time? There's always two sides to every story.
Hmm.
And we only have certain access to certain things. Obviously there's so
Hmm.
much stuff that's hidden and lost,
Hmm.
that in our history. And I think, like, take the Bible. I started reading the Bible through this little study, and I was like, some of the stories in there are beautiful. They're absolutely beautiful. And I started reading it, and it got to a stage where I said to Chris, I can't read it anymore. It's just too controlling. Like if you don't work on a Sunday, you'll die. And that's when I just was like, right, nope, sorry, I can't. I love the stories in the some of the stories in the Bible they really touch me, but that's a certain story that's been written to be a certain way. It's not the truth. It's not truth. And I think that's what they said about the era that we're in now is about truth seeking. It is truth.
Hmm.
And there's so many women who are still suppressed. Like I said, look at me the last few weeks. Like I've had that shift in releasing anger. And it's funny because Chris is doing the same now. After
Hmm.
seeing you on Friday, he's like, you're right, Pip. You have been releasing this anger, and I've been afraid of that. I've been afraid of
Yeah.
it. And that he said that's
Oof.
what men were like back then. These women are so powerful, and these men are like, oh God, it's uncomfortable. And he's
Yeah.
been releasing it all weekend. I'm like, go you. I was like, this anger
Hmm.
you've had for so long, this feminine side of him, he's not wanted to feel, he's not wanted to, be a burden in his feelings, but he's just been releasing this, like, I'm pissed off and I'm angry at this. And I'm like, we just bought a boxing punching bag. So it's interesting how women, they do lead the way in emotion. They do lead that. like you said, that emotional maturity. We've got this. We're just deeply more connected to our bodies, and we're an example for men.
And if you look at just you've just like had a beautifully segued into kind of where I want to go, which is the beginning of all of this. And so there's a couple of pieces. There is in anger, yeah, I know I don't know if you can speak into it, but I know for a lot of my female clients, and male, but particularly my female, there is this real fear around expressing anger. You know, sadness seems to be more socially accepted for women, and anger seems to be more socially accepted for men, whereas sadness and anger the other way around are not. And when we start to open up to there is me in this human experience and my experiences of life, but also when we look at our DNA and the things that are stored in our DNA, and then collective feminine we're picking up on, we have got a lot of fucking shit to be angry about. Like,
Mm.
and sometimes people are like, I don't even know where this anger is coming from. I'm like, do you know why? Because not that long ago, it wasn't safe to be angry, because if we were angry, we were like burned. First of all, we were actually fucking burned, right? Tortured, had everything taken away from us. Like, anger and expression has not been safe for so long. And that's why it's so important that we now in this life, like, have to remind ourselves, I'm not going to get murdered. I'm not going to have my children taken away. Like, I'm not going to have my whole life destroyed by actually expressing what is my truth and by stepping into my power. You know, and that's why I'm so passionate about, you know, the work you've been doing, which is so amazing, and releasing like this anger, which probably is not just yours, you know, but like releasing all of this stuff for the collective of, you know what, we can't carry this in our bodies anymore, and we're safe to express it now. And, you know, it's like I think for so long, there has been so much suppression of the things that we've needed to feel. So bringing in the Bible is a great conversation starter for the beginning of this. And just so we're really clear, and I know that our listeners understand this, the conversations that we go into are based on not only our own experiences, but based on factual events throughout history. I'm going to say really clearly, I think there is beauty in all religions. Like, there are so many fundamental, incredible, really aligned values and morals in every religion. And I honor the people that are within those areas of faith, that are in that place, that are not buying into the division, destruction agenda, but that are allowing that faith to come in and bring hope and connection and all of those things. So let's set that as the foundation.
Mm.
And also, let's look at what happened in history.
Yeah.
So if we go back to when Constantine came in, which was around the time of 200, 300 AD, what existed before that was very tribal civilizations that lived in unity, that lived in cohesion, that were very self-sufficient, that honored men and women, that raised families together. Like, it was a very togetherness societies that lived throughout like all of Europe and a lot of the Celtic places. Now, what happened was Constantine came in as ruler and decided that he wanted to essentially take power over those civilizations and create the Roman Empire. Now, pre that time, the places of politics and power, the Bible and the church did not exist in there. So it was people that were in power and they were in rulership. Now, what happened around that time was the first time that Christianity and religion was brought into places of power. And I heard a great quote on this the other day, was that it's not that there's anything wrong with Christianity. And the sad thing is that Christianity was used and manipulated as part of a destruction and division agenda. It was utilized in order to instill fear in people and control people. And parts of it were taken and used in order to essentially control the masses. And that's when fear was instilled. That's when it was like, if you are doing X, Y, and Z, then you are consulting with the devil.
Yeah.
And now you are going to be murdered, tortured, shunned. And this was the beginning of what was essentially the witch hunts that then lasted all the way until like 1800. Like, the last recordings of like witches being murdered was only 200 years ago.
Yeah.
That only 200 years ago. Like, whoa.
I know.
And that was the beginning. And I think what is really important for us to realize about the beginning of that, because like I said before, the people that were doing the things, they weren't putting them into the records. It wasn't in the books, you know, and there was so much that was happening. And that was when it came in of, because this is essentially what happened, was that rulership came in and wanted these incredible warriors, essentially, that were within these tribal civilizations to fight in their war. They wanted to take the men, and now we're like, you are a person of faith. So your faith says that you need to come and be under the power of this rulership, because it is also aligned with faith. So a lot of like the men were being taken out of their family units and their tribes. And you know who stood up? The woman. The woman were like, you can't fucking take our men. Like, you can't take our men. We need them. They're part of our, and this, like, I've had past life memories of exactly this happening. So this is why, like, oh, wow, my whole body feels it. And so how do you then control the woman? Like, men, they'd control the men. How do you then control the woman? And so what was it? It was like, let's now create fear and instill fear and control our woman through these ideas that we're going to manipulate through Christianity. So now, if you were, and prior to that time, women were involved in medicine. They were involved in all of the areas that needed to function in society. And so what did they do? They took children out of medicine so they could control the medical system. They took out the nurses, the doctors, the midwives. And this is when we saw the breakdown of what it was to even give birth. It's a whole nother topic. and also like astronomers, astrologists, scientists. This was not just women who were displaying like spiritual aspects. This is not just like the homeopaths and the naturopaths, and you know, the women that were really connected to land and animals. Like, yes, all of those, and women from places in power. So let's take all of the women out of the places of power, because their voice is really threatening to the agenda. And so, of course, that was the beginning, right? And now it was, and then it became any woman that owned their own land, you know, any woman that were single, any woman that were displaying any kind of connection to their sexuality. Now they're consorting with the devil, and the torturing and the murder was so horrific. So horrific. The evidence of the torture devices that were used, of the strategies that were used, of the threatening that was happening. And I was saying to people before we started recording, you know, it's like, so what we see now is there are still elements of competition and division and contraction between women. And do you know why? Is because for such a long period of time, it was, you either tell me the name of another woman who I can go and burn to create fear, or I'm going to murder your children in front of you right now. I'm going to drown your children. And so, of course, there is this like somatic response when it comes to like the stuff between us as women, because we were forced to compete against one another for life. And not only that, but for the lives of our children and our beloved ones. Like, this is real. Like, it's so real. And of course, we still feel it because we haven't tended to the wounds yet. Because not only have we not been aware of the wounds, but they have been intentionally hidden from us by not allowing these education pieces to come in. So that was the beginning. You go another, so this is so fucking insane. So the next 900 years after that, anywhere between, this is how fucked the records are, anywhere between 300,000 and 3 million women were murdered. Like, let that settle for a second, under the concept of like witch burning. And that's only the women. People forget it was men. Like, men were murdered, children were murdered. Like, this wasn't just an attack on women. It was an attack on women in power and women having their voices, because it was a control tactic. And as we know, fear is a very, very intelligent control tactic. It has been used throughout wars. It is what is happening right now. We have genocide occurring right now in the world, and the fear tactic around it and the division tactics around it are very, very smart. Like, it's an intelligent way to divide people, is through division of gender, division of of ethnicities, division of religion. Let's divide people, because divided, we are easier to control. Empowered, we are easier to control. And we've got to come to this place where we go, like, no fucking more. Like, no more dividing us so that we are easier to manipulate and control. And we still see it now. And it happens in lots of ways, but it still happens between us as women, because the more that we come together, the more we heal those wounds, the more we tend to the energetics of history, and come and soften with one another. And the more we realize that the raising up of one another and the celebrating of one another creates like the ripple effects, it creates this like, and that's where we have to go. And in order to do that, we really have to understand where we've come from. And like we were saying before, it's this, the more that we understand her story, the more that we can come into places with other women. And if we either feeling judgment coming up in ourselves and we're threatened by other women or whatever it is, or witnessing in others, we just go, it's that old story playing out. It's that old story playing out. What I have influence over is whether I participate in it or not. Even if we're hitting walls with other women, they can choose whether they stay in that, and we send love and compassion, and it's like those behaviors are not okay, but we can choose not to participate. We can step away or we can send love or whatever it is, but we all have to take responsibility for being in the oneness, like in the community and connection. And like on a personal note, the way that you and I have been able to meet, to connect, and then be so passionate about creating community and environment where it is women supporting women, right?
I'm just, I had a few tears when you were talking because my nervous system was doing something when you were talking. It was like,
Yeah.
I'm getting emotional now, actually.
Yeah.
I was kind of witnessing how I was feeling.
Oh yeah.
Because it's like, it's such a near to my heart topic, how women have treated
Mm,
each other. And when you were talking, I was like really feeling my nervous system go into like a response of like past life memories,
mhm.
like how they felt, like my heart was racing, I was shallow breathing. And I remember like when you talked about the torturing side of it, and it just really hit
Oh,
me because
yeah.
I had my first ever past life regression session was with a guy back in England, and he travels all around the world and he helps people with traumatic past lives. And I said,
Mhm.
let's go for it. And I went to two lives, and I remember them like they were yesterday. I was I was torturing people in one life, and I was being tortured in the other life. So that karmic
Mhm.
twist of both.
Mhm. Mhm.
So my nervous system was in this kind of state of confusion when you were talking around.
Mhm.
I know how it felt to be both, to
Yeah.
like for a past life, and I felt so much guilt after that session. Like,
Mm.
how could I have been that person? How could I have tortured people? But when this is what these conversations are about. I'm not worried about being judged because it's a past life memory, that
Mhm.
past life that I had to go through for experience.
Mhm.
I was
Mhm.
put in some sort of cult to
Yeah.
torture people, and if I didn't do it, I would be killed. It's the
Yeah.
same level of I didn't want to torture those people,
Mhm.
but because of my upbringing in that life, I was forced into that. And I remember in the life was really interesting. I was a woman and I had to torture women and children. And they were in these pits in this like old church building. It was a very long time ago. It must have been like the 1400s, 1500s,
Mhm.
very old. And I remember you couldn't leave. You were branded. And if you tried to leave, they would murder you. And I remember the life as it closed, there was like a circle window. And I remember looking up and this like light shone in. And I knew I didn't want to be there anymore. But I knew if I left, I'd die for it. And this dove landed in the window. And I remember just feeling like now's the time. And I remember running out of this, and there was loads of steps and there was a forest. And I just ran and ran, and I knew they'd follow me and I knew they'd chase me, but I knew that I would die in freedom. I would die
Yeah.
being free.
Oh, oh, I felt that.
So that's what was coming up. And then the other one was being tortured. It must have been, I think it was the Holocaust. That was my first initial gut, because I was a very pretty little girl. I had like blonde hair, blue eyes, like very like a bit like now, really, very like.
Hmm.
And I remember being like on a table in the dark room, and the men would like mess with me, and like they would like, it was just horrible. They'd make me drink stuff, and like they'd rape me, and it was like such a. And I remember like coming out of the past life regression, I was soaked in tears. I was just soaked in tears. But it released something. Like this was like 5 years ago, and it's always stayed with me. That's why I can't watch anything on TV that's about torturing, being tortured, what's going on in the world right now with the Palestine, like in Palestine. It's just all that. I can't, like I said to Chris, if part of me wants to help, like I want to help, but I can't, like I just can't put, like my heart's racing now thinking of,
Hmm.
these poor people, innocent people that are being tortured for information.
Hmm.
That's still
Hmm.
happening right now. That's still happening
Yep.
in our society. And I'm just like, what what is going on? Chris and I are watching a series at the moment. It's called Masters of the Air. And
Hmm.
Chris loves history, so anything that's to do with history he likes to watch it. And it's about the Second World War. And even watching that's really difficult. Like these are Air Force guys that, have to go bomb. And these guys are like, I don't want to go bomb those places because look at all the women and children that are. And it's just that level of like the PTSD that men felt going through that too. But then all these women are getting
Hmm.
killed because men are going to war with each other. It's like we've suffered for each other, and we've suffered because men were greedy. They were in power. And Chris has helped me to understand it because I've always pushed politics away. I've always pushed
Hmm.
the uncomfortable things away. Like, I don't know enough about politics. I don't know enough about this. And I'm like, but now I'm getting more passionate. Like my heart's racing now. Like I'm getting more passionate around that. I'm not, it's like the fear's leaving me, the fear of I can't talk about that opinion because what if people like shun me or exactly like
Hmm.
not technically burn me, but burn me in an emotional sense. Like if I speak
Absolutely.
up
Which
like
feels
like
the
I'm
same
doing
to the nervous
now,
system.
yeah. If like
It
and
feels
I
the
thought to
same.
myself when you were talking, we're so connected to our nervous system, we understand it from a trauma
Hmm.
perspective. And like I'm a big believer, like, and this is proven our nervous system is still carrying that pain, that fear in out because it's our lineage, it's where we come
Yeah.
from. And I feel
Yeah.
like you said, that generational trauma, it's those women that had to go through all of that as as witches and whatever. It's like we're still
Hmm.
feeling that, we're still like that's
Yeah.
still in our nervous system. That's why I've just been like feeling it as you were talking, like
Mhm.
really feeling into the sensation of it. Like they were in survival mode constantly because of wanting to speak up, to
Yeah.
speak the truth. So basically we like women now believe if I speak my truth, I'll die.
I'll die. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And it's just feeling into that. Like I feel like this topic is going to help women release that fear because I'm passionate about it in a sense of I've never been that woman that I was listening to a podcast yesterday about Mel Robbins. She was talking to Steve Bartlett. And she said, she gave us a tool to go away with. She said, look at someone who inspires you and look at someone who you're jealous of. And I just
Hmm.
said, turned to Chris in the car. I said, I'm not jealous of anyone. Like, I can't think of, maybe when I was younger, I had like a bit of
Hmm.
jealousy because, that comes from wounds and fear.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, I don't have that jealousy, but so many women do. They
Hmm.
do. And it's like, I've never had that trait of like, I was bullied in high school for having great parents and having, a great life. And I just used to think to myself, how can girls treat each other so and you're so passionate about that topic. I'm like, I've never been that. I've never been mean. I've not got a bad bone in my body. Like I'm not perfect by any means, but when I see friends and women, even women I don't know, when I see them shining and I'm getting emotional again because it's such a passionate topic for me, is like when I see women just it's a gift that I have and I want to embrace it. It's like when I see women shining and standing in their power and they get something or they've healed a wound or like they're stepping into this raw, authentic self and they're just working through some trauma. I'm like, I'm so happy for them. And that's just from the bottom of my heart. The deepest place in my heart is like, go you. Like, I'm so happy for you. And that's why I'm so emotional around it because it's an uncomfortable topic, but it's a passionate topic for me.
And it's also the understanding that we can have around unity consciousness, right? Is that not only are you feeling this absolute unconditional joy for someone else stepping into their power, you're, because of the work you've done and your understanding around consciousness and nervous system and somatics, is that you know that that raises collective frequency, which has an impact on us. So the more we're all contributing to that, the better it is for everyone. And this leads into like a really beautiful conversation around now. So what is occurring now in present day society that's past, right? What is occurring now that still is contributing to this division and the not enoughness story for us as women, right? And it is so prevalent. You look at the diet industry, the beauty industry, the fashion industry. There are a lot of people right now that are gaining a lot of money and power of women not feeling good enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when we understand that, we're like, fuck, of like I've gone through these periods of time where I felt shitty about myself and like I should look like that and act like that and be like that and this idealistic version of a woman, because like so we're in our 30s, like our whole life we have been exposed to magazines, TV things. Like I was listening to this conversation the other day, and do you remember that like who wore it better? They put
Yeah.
like two women, same outfit, who wore it
Celebrities.
better? Like what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like when
There's
you
so
look
much.
back, it's yeah, and all of that, you're like, oh my gosh, this like, okay, this not enoughness comes into motherhood. Like not a good enough mother. You should need to be doing that. You need to be doing that. One of the things I say to new mothers all the time is I was like, just be prepared for the fact that in somebody's eyes, you're going to be doing it wrong. Like there is going to be something out there that is telling you you're doing it wrong. And so all of those industries that gain so much of us not feeling good enough, and also the comparison with women. I run a youth therapeutic program with 9 to 11-year-old girls, and we do a whole topic on self-worth. And fuck, every time it breaks my heart. So we do a topic on self-worth, and we do a lot of exercises around it. We do a release exercise where we write down on a piece of paper. I've done this in my women's retreats, by the way. We write down on a piece of paper all the things that have been done to us in our lives that have not been okay and have not been good. And then all the things we've done to other people. When I do it with adults, I write a third list with them, and that is all the things you've done to yourself. Okay. And it's very therapeutic. We write it down and we put it through a shredder. And then I burn that and I send them a video of like burning it at home. And it's really therapeutic. But then the next part of the exercise is I've taken a photo of them, and it's on a piece of paper in their workbooks. And around it, they put down stickers of like things they like about themselves. And then every single person in the group, including the facilitators, writes messages around it of the things we love about them. Every single time we do it, before they open up their books to the photo, I say to them, I'm like, okay, so I just, I don't have a lot of rules in the program, but one of the ones is for you not to cover your face. And my God, 9 to 11-year-old girls, and they cannot even look at photos of themselves without feeling insecure, without feeling not enough, without feeling like ugly and unworthy and all of these things. And it's honestly like it breaks my heart every time. And I have had conversations with them, and I say to them, hey guys, so those photos you see in the magazines or on your Instagram, wherever it is, just so you know, actually I say, did you know that not only do those people that you follow have personal trainers, nutritionists, beauty therapists, hairstylists, fashion designers that, pick all their clothes for them, all of that. They've got, a lot of them have got cosmetic surgery. I said, and then often their photos are photoshopped. And a lot of them don't even know. Like I'm the first person that's even having this conversation with them. And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah, guys. So just remember, like we're real people sitting around this room right now. What you're seeing is a very idealistic version and perfectly angled photo of someone. Please do not compare someone's not realness to your realness. And so it's still prevalent now, this not enoughness again, because women that are disempowered are more easy to control.
Yeah.
And this is why we have to take radical responsibility for not participating in that. And for allowing ourselves to be in the process of that uncovering. It's for whenever I hold my women's retreats and women's circles, like I say, we come into the space and I say, hey, look, so we're always diluting, those pieces between women. I said, it's okay for you to feel triggered. It's okay for you to feel some jealousy, some judgment come up. That's okay. Let's not try and suppress that because it's a real response. Let's create some space for it to exist. It is welcome here, but let's acknowledge it so that we can transmute it and alchemize it.
Yeah.
Let's allow those parts, and let's allow the parts of us that have been the perpetrator, whether in this life or through our generations. As white people, there is a lot of like white people guilt that we have because we know like it was our forefathers that often through fear control tactics were forced into colonization.
Yeah.
um and so yeah, it's that like let's tend to all of the things in this experience that we can, so that they don't have to stay as these fragmented pieces of ourselves or of our own history or past lives. Let's bring it to the surface with love, right? Alchemize it with higher frequency, which is love, instead of letting those pieces sit in the shadow.
I love that like so much. And I think personally, like I said, you said about the who wore it better. That was a specific example for me on Friday wearing that pink outfit. Like I bought it and thought, oh, only skinny girls can wear that. Like it's only meant for skinny girls. And that was my own judgment in myself. And I remember just waking up on Friday morning before I came to see you and I was like, you know what? Fuck it. No, I'm a fucking beautiful curvy woman and I'm gonna wear my pink outfit because I love pink. Like pink's my favorite color. And I never felt so confident and in my own skin ever. Like I've been getting
Mm,
better at that. When insecurities
mm,
arise for me, I've been working on them a lot and I did work on them a lot when Chris and I were separated for 18 months. That did bring
yeah.
up a lot of, worthiness and feeling good enough and beautiful enough. And I think I said to Chris, sat down with him, I said, the reason why I've felt so insecure the last few months is because after my miscarriage, I've put weight on and I've, my body's changed since that, which is normal. I was pregnant and then I wasn't. So it's like,
Mm,
I've taken that pressure off myself to look a certain way, be a certain way, dress a certain way, and working on that. And then on Friday, wearing that outfit, I remember just being sat there and like two or three women just gave me a compliment. And I just thought, that's not only just nice for me to hear, it's a, it's a,
mhm.
it's an example for those women. Like, oh God, like look at that girl. She wore that outfit. She looked great in it. Maybe I
Mhm.
should go get my dress out that I've wanted to wear for so long and wear it
Yeah.
with pride and confidence and the self-love journey. That can definitely be a topic we talk about because the self-love
Mhm.
journey for me has been rough, like rough, hard. That can definitely be a next episode. I can talk about that till the cows come home. And I think the self-love journey, like you just mentioned, with those 9 to 11-year-olds, they're looking at themselves being like, oh, I'm this, I'm that, I'm this. And I just think to myself, these women that are having cosmetic surgery, I never judge them because I don't want to move into that energy. But I look at them and think, did you not realize how beautiful you were prior to those changes? Did you not see that? I could see it, and it's really sad. It is really sad. And like you said, these celebrities are like anyone with influence, like people in power and celebrities, they have such a huge influence on everyone else. And that's why I think social media has so many good things because it allows us to do this, but it has so many negative things where like
Mhm.
girls are watching these videos and pictures and being like, oh, I'm not skinny enough, my boobs aren't big enough. Just and it makes me so sad. And if I ever have daughters, which I really want daughters, I will tell them every single day, and this is my promise to them. I'll get them to listen to this podcast when they're older. This is my promise to
Yeah.
you, to my daughters, that I will tell you every single day how beautiful you are, how enough you are, and how perfect you are, and how loved you are. And just, I will just make sure that you are so loved and seen and heard, and you'll have my support till the day I die.
I saw this beautiful post the other day, and it was for all of the mothers with daughters. They are going to be told their whole lives that they look like you. So, how are you speaking about yourself?
Mm.
And And that's the part that we can be in the change, right? So I have a 12-year-old daughter who looks a lot older than she is, and looks kind of like me. She's a beautiful blend between her mother and father. But it was something that I was really committed to being part of the change in, going through her first bleed and, navigating through body changes and the way she feels about herself. And it was it not that it was the reason, but it definitely having children was the extra thing on top that I was like, I have to just fucking learn how to love myself.
Mm.
Like sometimes I'm not going to like things because we're all imperfect, and sometimes I'm going to have to own the fuck ups that I make. And also like the difference between, but we'll do a whole topic on this. The difference between body neutrality and body positivity is really important.
Mm.
And so it's not that we have to show up every day and be like, I love every part of my physical expression. It can be, I love this vessel and I'm here and I'm grateful. And yes, I do still have some insecurities around things. But again, I just like breathe into them and I'm like, oh, how can I show up in a way that really breathes into maybe that insecurity I'm feeling today? However, the words that we speak, like I can, and I say this with love and compassion if this is you and your journey, but I know one thing that's been pivotal in my parenting, I never speak negatively about my body ever out loud, especially if my children are around. Like I'm big, like will never shame myself, never shame my children's bodies, hold space for conversations that come up around that. I like even conversations where like I'll say to them, these are things I'm doing for myself today. These are some self-care things. Like these are the ways I'm showing up in my relationship to loving myself. And it's kind of off topic, but I remember when the kids' dad and I separated, and I realized I wanted my children to know what love was by the way I loved myself and by the way I loved them. Because they're learning how to love themselves based on how they see you loving you, and they're learning how to love others based on how you love each other.
Yeah.
So like there's an invitation to, again, with love, explore maybe as woman what your relationship is to yourself and your body and the messages that are coming out around that. Like are you looking in the mirror and then you're like covering up your body and your children see
Yeah.
that? Things like that of and obviously what's great about this podcast is that we have the means to help you in that. Like we're not like good luck in it. You guys know us. You can always work with us as practitioners, or we recommend people so that can help you in that acceptance journey. But it's those little pieces that we all can do that create the change around us as disempowered women and us in this division between women.
I love that. I think because I've learned so much from you, like I just look the first part of this podcast where you talk about the history, like I love all that. Like, I grew up in the UK, and when Chris was with me in the UK, I took him to like all the spots where like obviously the Romans
Mm.
came, they came and they wanted to conquer England, and you know, they did. They ruled. They were ruthless. And I think learning so much from Chris, like it's funny because I chose history in school as a topic because I loved it so much, and I just didn't like my teacher. She was just really difficult. And I remember in the UK with Chris, and he's taken me to all these spots, these like history spots. And I'm like, he's like, do you know about this? I'm like, no. He said, do you not know much about your English history? I said, no, I don't really. I said, but I'd love to learn from you. So he's just
Mm.
really, his knowledge is like insane with history, more so like English and European history and things like that.
Mm.
And just learning and hearing his, what he's learned and what he's taken on board with reading books, and he listens to the history podcasts. And like I said, it's funny because he listens to this history podcast, Dan Carlton, I think he's called, gets a lot of inspiration from him. And I'm like, okay, he pumps out a podcast every 6 months, and it's like 4 or 5 hours long. So he puts a lot of, like effort into them. And I remember saying to Chris, but he's only getting knowledge from what like, from certain resources and things. I said, but for me, shall we, like some of the stuff that we can't find online, because obviously a lot of stuff's online, it's fabricated and it's not truth.
Mhm.
For me, a lot of the information that I found about our history and her story, and how women would, like, so the tribal women would come together and the red tents in cycles, like something we can talk about on the topic, where I found out all that information was in here,
Yeah,
was within.
remembering.
So I would
Mm.
literally go to like spots in history, or like say, I would,
Mm.
it would just be random flashes like I'd been there. Like you have all the knowledge within you to connect to your lineage, to our ancestors. You know, we're all connected and intertwined together. So a lot of the knowledge and information is from within, from meditation. So I think that would be a tool that I would
Mm.
recommend and encourage everyone, not just women, to do, to connect into their own knowledge, into the source, because we've got everything we need within.
Mhm. Yeah, that feels really good. Like, as you were speaking, I was like, yeah, it's this remembering,
Mm.
the process of remembering, and just creating space for all of the remembering to occur, even the stuff that's uncomfortable, holding ourselves through the process of remembering what was taken from us, but also going back to the places and reigniting, like you said, the retent and the village, and coming together and bringing that into modern day society where a lot of us have lost that village. And so how can we resurrect that? Is like what Pippa and I do. Like, we found each other and we were like, yes, like let's connect and let's create friendships and let's bring one another into community, and let's also bring other people into that. And that's why we're so big on like bringing as many people as possible into like the village, and the village goes far and wide and it goes online and it goes in person. And like not how can we are resurrecting that colonized kind of like pre-witch hunt day village, which is, yeah, this supporting one another and loving on one another and celebrating one another, even in any feelings that might come up in there, and taking responsibility to committing to our own self-growth journey and holding ourselves accountable. Like that's how we recreate it in modern day. And it's so exciting to feel that happening. That happens with us, it happens with people we know. And it's the way forward to not only heal the wounds, but create that, on a macro level, the masculine, feminine, energetic balance that we need to happen in order to have evolution as humanity. Our evolution is dependent on a micro internal embodied feminine masculine, alchemization and harmonizing, and also that on a macro level in terms of society. And that's what we're doing, when we come into those spaces. So, even though this is quite an intense conversation,
I know, like the tears rolling
um
down my face, like,
yeah,
but that's
you know
what's
there's
that's
hope. Yeah, and it's
yeah,
like, this is something I know I'm really passionate about, and if anyone
I
knows
love
me,
it.
like
Yeah.
I will like bring the like shadow, I'm gonna like rip it and then bring it and hold it in love and also in hope and in commitment to showing up in the evolution and the change that needs to happen. And it's exciting. I feel like we're on a precipice in terms of this, and we're really dismantling the old shit, the old system, the old ways. And from the ashes of that, we're really creating a new way of being and of connecting and of interacting that is a remembrance, like you said.
Yeah, it's like, but that's what I'm grateful for as well with this connection, is that I can just sit here and cry and just release and be raw and talk about it and just think like I'm feeling all those things. Like I'm such a feeler. I'm very sensitive. I'm an
Mm,
empath,
mm,
I feel like so
mm,
deeply. And I think having that space where I'm really grateful for you to hold that space for me, and like
mm.
everybody listening, it's like crying is such a release. I just got
Oh,
off a call with my parents this morning. And I know my mum did this really unconsciously. Like I don't judge her for it, but it's just an example I want to give you. I was saying hi to my 3-year-old niece, and we were talking about, she misses the boys and she misses me and Chris, and she's only 3 years old. And she started crying, and my mum said, "Oh, don't let the boys see you cry. They'll think you're a softie." And I thought my mum didn't
yes,
mean it in a bad way, but I
I
thought this
know.
is like the unconscious language
Mm-hmm.
that is making a big
Mm-hmm.
difference to children. Like if that was
Mm-hmm.
me, I would have been like those tears. I was like, because that's how they communicate. Like I was saying about anger, when kids
Well,
have tantrums, we're uncomfortable with the tantrums, but I'm going to sit there with my children and be like, tantrum, I'm going to actually hold space for them. They might want to hug, ask them what they
mm-hmm.
need. That's another topic we can
Mm-hmm.
talk about, parenting and
Yeah.
what I've learned being a stepmother and things like that. But it's watching them and being like, a tantrum is just a spurt of anger. It's an emotional release for them. That, that's how they communicate. And I think we need to educate ourselves and become more self-aware in ourselves so we can then for that future generation. And Chris wanted me to mention this from his session with you on Friday, which he's not stopped talking about. It was such a great thing he needed to do, and he wants to do more of it because he said that's a big thing he wants to do is spiritually connect with me more. Because you get so wrapped up in life, you forget to stop and go, let's just meditate together tonight. Let's just go on a walk
Mm,
together. He said it's not like people think, oh, it doesn't matter about saving the planet because I'm not going to be here in 50
mm.
years, 20 years, whatever. Actually, yeah, you do because you're going to come back in another life, so you're going to come back to Earth.
Absolutely.
So what you do now is not just helping generations to come, it's helping your future lives when you come back to experience more of this human experience. So he's like, actually, we're all just stupid saying that, oh, I'm not going to be here in a few years. So your existence on this planet right now is so important. It's so needed. All of you listening is like, you've got such an important, powerful, magical role to play on this time.
Mm.
Like I said, we're just tenants renting space on this earth for a short lease. And what are you going to do with that short lease? Are you going to be
Look
shitty
after the
tenants?
house.
Look after it, like, take care of this vessel, take care of what you have. And I think that's the point, is like we're renting space and then we move on, to maybe another life, a different realm. Then we come back and we rent space again on this earth as something else. And I think it matters. What you do matters. And that's a real big thing I wanted to end on, is that what you do
Mm.
matters.
Mm-hmm. It does. Mm. And however you can show up in that capacity of the impact, the stepping into discomfort, the stepping into your truth, the stepping into your power, is whatever your capacity is today to show up in that. We honor that. We want to look after our systems, our nervous systems, in this state of evolution that we're in. And so everything you're able to do today is enough.
Yeah.
The fact you're listening to us and you're in this conversation with us
Mm.
is amazing, and we honor you for that. The fact that maybe you've leaned into some discomfort in this, or you've been triggered in this, or like, that is perfect. And thank you. Like, thank you for being part of the change. Every single one of our listeners, you are already part of the change.
Yeah, and like you said, if you have felt uncomfortable and you've had like, oh, your nervous system's been a bit not very happy, and moved into different, elements, like part of the different elements in your body, like, reach out to us, join our Patreon for more support, join.
Yeah.
You're like I said, you're already in the movement by listening to us, watching us on YouTube, whatever, however you listen to us. And the Patreon is just that deeper level of being in that community of like, what, I want to feel that. I want to be around safe women. I've got enough shitty people around me. I want to be with people that I might not know Showie and Pip very well, but I just vibe with them like you and I did, Showie. Like, I don't know you like a best friend, but one day I will. So it's just that going with those gut feelings. So we do have the
Yeah.
Patreon available for anyone who wants to have that community feel, as we call the red tent, where you just walk in the red tent and you're like, oh, this is my tribe. I love this. I feel safe. I feel non-judged. Like, just that's the space I've always been given to people, and I want to carry that on. One thing I wanted to ask you as well, what's in my head, because we leave on a question as well. I was like, if you haven't thought of a question for me yet, I'll answer the same that I asked you, but I didn't know if you had.
I have a question. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Um, I will just leave you guys with one little nervous system regulation tool. And you guys, if you're watching on YouTube or video, you might have noticed. So when Pip was talking about the activations that were happening, I put my hand on the back of my neck. Now putting your, look at my arms.
Oh.
I always forget. Like, anyway, it's a distraction. Me celebrating me, because that's what we're all about. So putting the hand on the back of the neck is a really great nervous system regulation strategy, because it works with that limbic system that's sitting there. And you can also put the other hand on heart space or on womb space, and just spend some time there breathing into that, and it does wonders for the
Yeah,
nervous
it
system.
does.
So there's like a nice little hot tip, nervous system hot tip.
Thank you for that.
All right. So are you ready?
Yeah, and then I think my book recommendation with the topic, I'm like, there's so many different ones that I want to say. I don't have a specific book, but what I was thinking about with a recommendation was the podcast that you introduced me to. So I
Absolutely.
always think like podcasts are just like
100%.
books anyway, was the Deja Blue podcast. I know she's finished now. She's like on a break, but if you could search Deja Blue,
Mhm.
I just listened to them for a couple of episodes and I'm like, holy shit,
Mhm.
like they speak my language. So I'm not going to
Mhm.
give you a book recommendation this week because there's so many and I can't think of one, but podcast will be Deja Blue.
Yeah, amazing. I will share in our stories on Instagram as well. Probably just regularly will pop in there, but particularly the episode with Reverend Brianna Lynn that
Mhm.
is on this exact topic. And that's where I have got a lot of my inspiration and like the memories remembering came up listening to her. Because she's so passionate about this topic. Yeah, great recommendation.
Mhm.
So there is a book recommendation that I have, and it is called Burning Woman by Lucy
Wow.
H. Pierce.
Mhm.
Like, so that particular podcast episode ignited something in me. Then I listened to Burning Woman, and whoa, like, whoa, that is her story. She has uncovered all of the pieces throughout different countries and throughout history. That is the actual story of what has happened to us. So highly recommend. Um, yeah, cool. Beautiful. So my question, great, and you're going to answer them next episode, aren't you?
Yes.
Okay. First question, what would be your last meal? So if you got to choose final meal, if you're on death row, it's like the really morbid part of the question, but or if you were just choosing to leave this physical experience, what would your last meal be? Um, if you could go back and relive any experience or memory, if you could go back and relive it again, what would it be?
Mhm.
And then the third question is if you could sit down with any person alive or dead and have a conversation with them, who would it be?
Okay. I think I've already got three of those. So that'll be good
Yeah,
for
yeah,
next
cool.
week. Did you have a favorite quote for today?
Yeah, so I don't know if I mentioned it last episode. I don't think I did. My favorite quote of all time, and it encompasses this, but also encompasses our podcast. So, shame dies when stories are told in safe places.
Love that.
And oh, like it's so true and it's so like you feel it. And so my intention, and I know yours as well, in this podcast is to create the safe place where shame can die and can die in a really beautiful, loving way. Diluting that part of us that still holds on to that shame in this space is our invitation for you.
Oh, I feel that. Yeah. Women carry
Mm.
all that shame, don't they? They carry other
Mhm.
people's shame. It's like, I don't want it. Let me get it. Like,
And come to the safe place so it
yeah.
can be alchemized.
That's why I said like that Patreon community is like, that's exactly what you've just explained.
Yeah, 100%.
And we get to share stories in safe places.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, I just love these topics.
Woo!
Like, I'm just so grateful I get to feel it and not just like I said, like I had that anger release and I didn't feel ashamed to do that. And since then, I've just been
Mm.
feeling even more deeply. Like I cry a lot anyway because I can't even like watch like if I see a guide dog on the side of a road with a person, I'm like, oh, I just yeah, like I'm such a deep feeling. I always have been. I'm grateful for that. It's such a
Mm-hmm.
gift.
A gift.
So
Mm-hmm.
I'm very grateful for you. I'm very grateful to everyone listening. I know every
Mm.
week's just going to be a powerful conversation. I've learned a lot from you today. So thank you for sharing all of your
Mm.
wisdom and knowledge with me.
Yeah, and thank you for alongside me creating a space for these conversations to reach who they need to. Mm.
If you're watching us on
We love
YouTube,
you.
please subscribe to
Mm.
us because, like I said, we always forget to ask that. It's like, I always feel like if I'll make the deal with you, if you subscribe, we'll keep coming back every single week. I promise you, I'll make a promise to you that
Mm.
each week, Shally and I
Mm.
will just keep showing up as our
Mm.
authentic selves. If you subscribe and leave us a review, it would just be awesome
Mm.
because this movement is already just blowing up. It really is. That's the
That's
only
what I
word I
was
could
just
use, blowing
gonna
up.
I
And
know it's blowing up. I was just gonna check right now, and I was gonna say a huge thank you to everyone that's getting behind our social media. So after we're not even launched yet, without even launching, 365 followers on our Instagram page. And honestly, it is just like we already knew that we were being manifested. Like we knew that these conversation spaces were being manifested. And then it's just like, whoop,
Mm.
So I've decided we're going to get to 400 followers on Instagram by the time we launch.
Yeah.
So obviously all this conversation would already be happening once we have, but just a huge thank you to everyone that has been supporting us, that is getting behind the movement, is sharing their love and appreciation already.
I love
Like,
it.
thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much, guys, from the bottom of our heart. It means the world. And we'll be back next week with another episode. I can't
Yeah.
wait. Take care, guys.
Love you.